this is not an event that had taken place in front of my own eyes, but it has surely happened to my grandfather. My dad told me this story, and it gave me a chance to look at spirits who have yet to rest, but are not actually scaring people to death. Here is my grandfather's tale. My grandfather was only 36 years of age, and he of course needed a job. He had looked in agriculture, the stores down the street, even the Starkiest factory that was quite a ways away. No jobs whatsoever. Finally, after 3 weeks of looking, he had seen an ad for a wanted bus driver for the night shift position. At the time, he didn't care what kind of job it was or when he had to work. All he cared about was supporting his family. After a few days, he had gotten the job to work from sundown to an hour before sunset. The bus driving job was steady. He really didn't have any riders unless it was someone who also worked late. Soon, he had picked up on which riders came on, what time they came on, and where they should be dropped off. But a year into the job, he had gotten a new rider who would only ride for that one night. He saw the man standing at a stop to which no one had stood before, and for the first time, he could stop there. The man was described as well-rounded, pale, with a blue suit, which was very odd because it is so hot in Samoa, even at night. Like every other customer, my grandfather had welcomed him with a smile. Being the kindly fellow, my grandfather also tried to talk to him. He asked him, "How are you doing this evening? Where did you come from?" and just normal conversation questions. The only thing this man replied to is where he should be dropped off. My grandfather tried to get something cheerful out of the pale man, but there was no response. As soon as the bus got to the destination as stated by the man, my grandfather opened the door, looked up to the mirror, and said to him, "Here is your stop, sir," and looked behind. Usually, at this time, you can hear the passenger get their stuff together and proceed to the front, but not this time. He heard dead silence. He looked up at the mirror again and saw nothing. This is a true story, and although I don't believe in ghosts, it did raise some goosebumps. The first week, I was driving around 1 to 2 a.m. I got a signal to pick up a rider at the music factory. At that time of night, the streets were dead and the music factory was empty. The address didn't seem right to me and kept having me circle around back to a deserted old road. Thinking that the GPS must be off a few blocks, I decided to circle around the next few streets. I even made 5 phone calls to no avail, no answer or voicemail. I started thinking maybe I was being set up to be robbed. But I guess my curiosity got the best of me and I had to see for myself. After all, somebody could be drunk or hurt. Let me backtrack a bit and explain that the Uber screen shows both my car and the figure of a person and a closing distance as you approach. The road behind the building is old and unkempt. I thought to myself, this doesn't look good. I kept driving further back and the distance between me and my rider closed in, until finally the road came to a dead end. My display spoke and told me to turn right and my rider would be 100 feet away on my right. I turned slowly to my right and saw a very old cemetery. The gates were standing wide open. Off in the distance, about 100 feet away, was a white foggy figure standing by a headstone. My hair stood on end and I was instantly covered in goosebumps. Needless to say, I decided to skip that fare. In October of 2009, I started a new job working security. I got posted in Banning, California, at an Edison substation. I was working graveyard, patrolling around the outside of the substation. I'd been there for a few nights. Nothing really seemed out of place at first. We had 4 checkpoints we had to tag with a GPS device. We didn't have access to the inside, nor the east side of the area, due to a neighboring business. The south side fenced the street. The west had a narrow path to walk and a business beyond that surrounded by a chain link fence. The north side had a field, and after about 50 feet, a set of train tracks. Checkpoint 1 was the southeast side. Checkpoint 2 was the southwest corner, which I posted my truck. The northwest was checkpoint 3, and 4th was the northeast. There was an area by the train tracks not on the patrol, but it was the actual northeast corner. I walked up to the far area beyond my normal patrol area, as I was prone to do. As I came back around, I felt the air suddenly get colder and heavier. I thought nothing of it and continued on by checkpoints 4 and 3. As I started down the corridor between 3 and 2, I saw a figure about 6 foot, blonde hair, thin build, and slightly glowing walk through the fence, from the inside the substation, and through the fence on the opposite side, traveling from east to west. I carried a handheld spotlight since there was so little lighting to the area, and the guy was nowhere to be seen. I ran back towards checkpoint 4 and regained my composure. I cautiously walked back to the area I had seen the figure to make sure the fence hadn't been cut. No holes, cuts, or anything else I could find. No footprints, nothing that suggested it had happened. I went back to my truck and dropped the tailgate and sparked up a cigarette. I set it down to grab something out of my lunchbox, and as I went to retrieve my smoke, it glowed like someone was dragging off of it and then fell to the ground. I thought at first maybe it was a breeze, but the night was completely still. I'm not sure if it was a ghost or maybe residual energy. I'm not sure if the substation still has security there. I was transferred off that post for a better position a week or so later. If there's no security and you decide to visit, I don't remember directions. Watch for Banning PD because they do frequent the area. I guess it started when I was little. My mom and I have always been a little more open to the things unexplainable. I was about 5 years old, making my brothers 4 and 3. My brother, who was 3, is autistic and his tic was trains. My mother would hear his toy train go off. It made choo-choo noises and played music and flashed lights when you push buttons on the side. Every night for months, and she thought it was just us playing at night. She would come back to check in on us and we would be sleeping. At the time, me and my siblings shared a room. Finally, my mom took the batteries out of the toy train. The next night, without it having batteries, my mom once again heard the train going off. Me and my brothers were downstairs, and my mom went upstairs to check on the noise she heard. She turned the train off and returned downstairs. A few minutes later, I swear I heard giggling, and I know I was young, but I clearly remember the figures of a little girl and boy walking down the stairs. It was just shadows on the walls, like their outlines. When I looked from the wall to the stairs, nothing was there. When I got older, my mom told me that night, after we saw the shadows of the kids, that she told the kid ghosts, if you're good, you can stay. If you're bad, you have to leave. My mom said she never had experiences with them again. The toy train never went off on its own again. I don't know what happened. I can't explain it. To this day, my mom still swears she saw the 2 kids. I don't know if they were bad. My mom said we were never harmed. The train thing going off went on for months until the night it went off without having any batteries. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe it was just a coincidence. I have no idea. I was a long-haul trucker for many years. In December of 2004, I had a delivery in Winchester, Virginia, and a second stop in Washington, D.C. At my first stop, I was delayed and didn't get unloaded until 2 a.m. I left Winchester heading east on Highway 7. Around 2:30, I came to the intersection of Highway and a Route 601 near Bluemont. At a gas station, I pulled in to check my map of Washington in anticipation of my delivery. The station was closed at that hour. There was virtually no traffic going by, and it was a cold, moonless night. While I was sitting there, someone knocked on my door, startling me. I jumped and turned off my interior light so I could see outside and rolled down my window. A man was standing there in an airline flight crew uniform. He had 4 stripes on his shoulders, indicating a captain. He was without a jacket on a very cold morning. He climbed up on the step of my cab. He smelled like he had bathed in kerosene. When he got close to my face, I could see that his cap had the TWA insignia on it. "Could you give me a lift?" he asked in a voice that seemed raspy. I assumed it was from the cold. I was really taken off guard. It was odd. I was in a dark, rural area on a freezing night being asked by an airline pilot wearing short sleeves for a ride. I asked him where he was headed. "I work for TWA. I gotta get the Dullies to work a flight. Please give me a ride. I'll pay you," he responded. "Well, how about I give you a ride to the next open store where you can call a cab?" I offered. "Okay, thank you, he mumbled. He said that we could descend. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I didn't want the guy to freeze out there. He climbed down and shuffled around the front of the truck. When he passed the first light, I was struck by the fact that he seemed to have long sideburns, a la Elvis. When he continued on to the right, he totally vanished. I don't mean faded away, he just ceased to exist. I jumped out of the truck and looked all around with a flashlight, even under the truck. He was just disappeared. As I continued on towards Washington, I remembered something odd. TWA had gone out of business over 2 years ago. What was going on, I wondered, totally perplexed and shaken by the experience. When I got home, I did some online research. What I found has totally turned my beliefs upside down. I've always thought that ghost stories were hokum, but with what I learned, I'm no longer sure. It turns out that on December 1st, 1974, a TWA Boeing 727 Flight 514 descended prematurely through a low cloud deck and slammed into a rocky outcropping on Mount Weather, Virginia. The aircraft disintegrated with all 92 people on board killed. The flight had originated in Columbus, Ohio, and was supposed to land at Washington National Airport. It was diverted to Washington's other airport, Dulles International, because high winds had closed National. According to cockpit voice and flight data recordings, the crew mistakenly believed that air traffic controllers had cleared them to descend to 1,800 feet from their previous altitude fix of 7,000 feet. This error, combined with strong downdrafts, caused the aircraft to hit the mountain at 1,600 feet above sea level. At the last second, they broke out of the overcast, only to see the rocky and snow-covered mountain looming in their windscreen. The captain's last words to his co-pilot were, "Get some power on," just moments before the recording abruptly ceased. The place of the impact was less than a mile south of where I encountered whoever or whatever it was that I saw almost exactly 30 years later. I don't want to definitely say it was a ghost, but the fact remains that there was someone who appeared to be an airline pilot with a very dated hairstyle, wearing a uniform of a defunct business. I no longer am a trucker, but this has troubled me for over 2 years. If anyone would have any insight into this, I'd appreciate your help. Thank you.